Hi, this is Machine Pun Kelly, and today I want to talk about DOGE. Before we get going, I'll let you know there is a corresponding Substack article combined with this video. The link is below and contains embedded links to sources for the claims I make. Now, on to the show. DOGE, or the Department of Government Efficiency, was established by Donald Trump's executive order. It renamed and reassigned the mission of the United States Digital Service. Its purpose is to carry out Trump's agenda of federal spending cuts and deregulation, and to, quote, modernize federal technology and software to maximize governmental efficiency and productivity. While that may sound innocuous enough, its implications are terrifying. And if you're not concerned, there are 5 things you should absolutely know. First, it is unconstitutional. Some have used the term constitutional crisis, but that seems too soft. By definition, a constitutional crisis is a situation in which a major political dispute cannot be clearly resolved on the basis of that particular government's constitution or established practice. But this can be clearly resolved. There is no question in need of answering. The powers of each of the branches of government are enumerated, meaning they are specifically granted. They are not open-ended. For the legislative branch, they are as follows. And here they are for the executive branch. The important thing to call your attention to here is that Congress alone has the power to control spending policies. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1 of the Constitution says, "The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imports, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States." This is known as the spending clause, and it leaves no ambiguity. The power of the purse is given to the legislative, not the executive branch. There is also no legislative basis for DOGE. The Trump administration argues that DOGE's authority to do what they are doing comes from the 1932 Economy Act. That act was established to cut duplicative contracts by the U.S. government. If 2 separate departments were paying for the same thing, then they would essentially share. It was in line with what the United States Digital Service was doing with their government websites. Trump and his puppeteers have tried to use this as the legal basis in court for what he is doing. However, the act doesn't remotely empower the shutting down of entire departments or firing anyone, much less the whole-scale mass firings DOGE is doing. In sum, there is absolutely no legal or constitutional ground for DOGE to be operating as it is. Third, transparency already exists. DOGE apologists insist that this is all justified because there is no transparency in government spending. But there is absolute transparency, and you can find it at usaspending.gov. This was established by the Bipartisan Digital Accountability and Transparency, or DATA Act, which passed the House with a voice vote and the Senate unanimously. It was signed into law in 2014 by President Barack Obama. It's worth pointing this out because every Republican who has been in Congress for more than 11 years actually voted for it, so they know it exists. All the data for how money is spent is available, both in a searchable online database and a downloadable SQL file that contains all the data since 2001. You can search the online database by any kind of parameter you might reasonably want to, by department, recipient, keyword, or grant ID, for instance. You can even see how a particular search parameter was spent by state. For example, last year in the state of Texas, $97.2 million federal dollars were spent on things including DEI in its description. How is divulging every dollar that has been spent for the last quarter century not being completely transparent? The entire premise of DOGE being necessary because of a lack of transparency is a complete and total sham, particularly given the lack of transparency from DOGE. Item number 4, audits already exist. Republicans say, well, what is wrong with doing an audit to see if fraud or waste exists? There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, there is something called the General Accountability Office. Its website says, each year, GAO reports on federal programs with fragmented, overlapping, or duplicative goals or actions. And we proposed hundreds of ways to address those problems, reduce costs, or boost revenue. And per the Wikipedia article, the United States Government Accountability Office is an independent, nonpartisan government agency within the legislative branch that provides auditing, evaluative, and investigative service for the United States Congress. It is the supreme audit institution of the federal government of the United States. So audits are already happening. The office was established by the Budget and Accounting Act of 1921. It is headed up by the Comptroller General. The Comptroller General is appointed by the President with the advice and consent of the Senate to a 15-year term. The present Comptroller General is Gene Dodaro, who was appointed by President Barack Obama in December of 2010 to a 15-year term, which means that his term expires in December. So keep an eye on that. That said, it's not like the GAO is rubber stamping every budget. In fact, they haven't endorsed the accuracy of the consolidated figures for the federal budget since 1996, citing, number 1, serious financial management problems at the Department of Defense. 2, the federal government's inability to adequately account for and reconcile intergovernmental activity and balances between federal agencies. And 3, the federal government's ineffective process for preparing the consolidated financial statements. There are actual audits that happen to the tune of over 900 reports per year. The irony is that the money spent on DOGE is a redundancy and is by definition actual waste. And 5, there is no newfound fraud. While Musk and his little Dogites claim to be saving $1 billion a day, these reports can't be taken seriously. It is difficult to fact check all the savings claims because they are so poorly sourced and often misrepresented. Not a single third party has been able to confirm a single instance of new fraud DOGE alleges to have found. In many ways, it's actually resulting in waste. For instance, claiming USAID is a criminal organization was not only hyperbolic, unilaterally shutting it down may have caused $500 million of food to perish needlessly. But accidentally firing half the nuclear weapons stockpile team is all the indication that you need to know that this team is not auditors and has no idea what they are doing. They are acting with the care of a ketamine-fueled bull in a china shop. Most of the claims of fraud, which would mean a crime, are not fraud. They are fundings legally passed by Congress, signed by the president, and spent the way intended. They are just spent on different priorities from a different administration. To provide actual fraud, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt actually pointed out to the findings of the aforementioned General Accounting Office, not the work of DOGE. In short, nothing that DOGE has done points to actual fraud, waste, or abuse. It is, in fact, an illegal, unconstitutional, unmandated agency operating recklessly and without oversight. The only fraud, waste, and abuse we can find here is DOGE.